I tried so hard, and I got so far, but in the end, I guess it kind of mattered, but not really. I tried Bloodborne last year. Someone sent it to me in the mail off my Amazon wishlist when I got my PS4, which is pretty fucking cool. Thanks, dude, for that. I don't remember who it was because I suck at everything, but thanks. Everybody in the PCP, which is the podcast I'm in every week, if for some reason you're watching this and don't watch the PCP, but everybody in the PCP, besides me, really loves the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, Demon Souls. There's like a name for it. I don't fucking remember what it is, because I don't usually play these games. But I played Bloodborne, or tried to play Bloodborne, because everyone's like, this is the one that's easiest to get into. It's a bit more forgiving. And I tried, and I liked it more than I thought I would, to be completely fair. It was more fun than I thought it would be. It was very visceral, which was probably the best part of the game, was just like the way the hits felt really heavy and nice. And even though I'm not a huge fan of like the way it moves kind of slower than something like Devil May Cry, which is more my speed, the wind-up really added to the impact. So that was nice. But I don't like hard games. And I know that's a controversial thing to say. I know it labels me a fucking dirty casual, but I don't like my games overly difficult. Everybody in the PCP really appreciates the challenge of a difficult game and really mastering mechanics, learning the boss enemy patterns, and just kind of mastering this extreme uphill challenge that the developers present you. And that's something they really enjoy. And I'm not one of those people. Not to say that I don't enjoy a challenge, but I definitely have a limit. There's a limit where, to me, a game stops becoming something enjoyable and starts becoming a bit of a job or a grind to have to get through. And my tolerance for that's probably much lower than most people. I guess my base mentality around why I'm not a huge fan of hard games and why I do consider myself a casual gamer, despite having a shelf over there with probably like 250 PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, and Wii U games and stuff, is that I play games for a fundamentally different reason than it seems the other guys in the PCP and a lot of hardcore gamers do. I'm not seeking challenge and looking to overcome it. To me, video games are leisure time. You know, I don't identify as a gamer. Playing games isn't something that I do in order to kind of like bolster my own status in my own mind or anything like that. Games are a diversion. They are an attempt at relaxing after working hard on all the stuff that I actually do, to a degree this channel, even though these videos are much simpler now, and working on 3D, making 3D graphics instead of just enjoying them is really where my passion lies, and drawing and writing and things like that. That's where I really enjoy getting deep into a challenge and figuring it out. How am I going to do real-time cloth simulation on a low-poly model when there's barely enough verts to actually have an effective simulation that way? That's an interesting challenge to me, and I like how it's really difficult. That's not what I play games for. I play games to relax. I play games to unwind. I play games as an exercise in catharsis after racking my brain trying to figure out those things. And I usually play only 1 or 2 days a week because I'm working the rest of the time. I am a casual gamer by self-admission. And what I believe casual gaming is, and I suppose everybody could define it differently, but to me, a casual gamer is less about trying to rise to the occasion of a challenge presented in a game and more being able to find a set of mechanics that is pleasing to use, and then being put in a situation where you're given just enough of a challenge in order to really exercise those mechanics in an effective and entertaining way. I really like DMC Devil May Cry. Everybody I know hates that game. I thought aesthetically it was great, and even though I like the other Devil May Cry games just as much, with the exception of 2, because fuck you, buddy. But I really like DMC and the rest of them equally as much, whereas hardcore gamers, it seemed, spit on the grave of DMC 5 and love the rest of them. The other 4 games are much more difficult. Despite that, I loved those games, and I love Ninja Gaiden for the original Xbox, another very difficult game that I actually enjoyed a lot. And the reason why is because it meets my definition of being a game I enjoy. It has a very interesting, satisfying set of mechanics and presents a situation where you can explore those effectively without getting too frustrated. Now, I know for a lot of people, Ninja Gaiden is a very frustrating game. And for me, coming back to it after not playing it for a long time, yeah, it's a little bit frustrating. But Devil May Cry 1 and 3, and 4 to an extent too, while they're rather difficult games, sort of, I never found them all that difficult because I guess I just took to them very easily. But their mechanics are really fun to explore, and they present a situation where you never get bored exploring those mechanics. And that's why I play games. I like finding a mechanic that I really enjoy. That's something like Brutal Doom's another great example of a game I come back to all the time. Metal Gear Rising is another game I play all the time. And Devil May Cry 1, Devil May Cry 3, and DMC Devil May Cry. They all have mechanics that I find are really fun, and they present a situation where you can explore those mechanics without getting bored and without ever getting too frustrated. So it allows, it's an exercise in leisure. It's like watching a movie for me. That's why I want to get the same sort of experience I get watching a movie, where it doesn't challenge me or stress me out. It's a fun experience. It's a way to relax and enjoy the content being presented. I don't want a game to be super easy. I don't just want to fucking like cakewalk and just curb stomp it from start to finish. But I don't want it to be so much of a barrier that it starts to impede my sense of enjoyment. If it starts to like stress me out, if I start to get really fucking viscerally pissed off at it, that's where I start to have problems. And that's also a personal issue because I get mad at video games very easily, and that probably blocks me off from a lot of games that if I didn't have that issue I would otherwise enjoy. There's usually one section in every game that gets me fucking livid and I go on a goddamn tirade. There's always a choke point in the games that do that to me. But by and large, if a game is designed to be like one massive choke point from start to finish, and the mechanics I don't find satisfactory enough to kind of grind through that, because here's the thing, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, those games have good mechanics. I just don't find them fun enough to keep me invested in overcoming the difficulty. Because in Ninja Gaiden, for example, which is another really hard game, which probably isn't as hard as Bloodborne, or maybe it's just more to my liking. You can comment on below how you think about that. I haven't played enough of those series to really know. Ninja Gaiden was fun to fail for me. Because the gameplay and the mechanics involved are so fun that even when you get fucking curb stomped, getting curb stomped is still fun because the mechanics I really like. I love the countering system. I like the combo system. All that stuff is really nice. I like how it's fast. I never felt like I was fighting the game itself. Ninja Gaiden gives you a lot of control and a lot of options in combat. Whereas in something like Bloodborne, I felt because it had that wind up, because it had all these things you have to like think more about, it was more actively trying to impede you. I felt like the controller was made out of lead and the character moved way too slowly, and I had to think too much about how I did things and not what I was doing. And does that make me a casual gamer? Yeah, sure. I don't want to take the time to kind of like learn on top of what to do, the wait times in between things and how to string things together properly. Ninja Gaiden didn't give me that problem. It's just like you hit a button and it happens. And so I don't have to think about all the like nuanced like timing issues with Ninja Gaiden. The most thing you have to time is how to do a proper counter, and that's much more reactive instead of proactive. So I don't know, games like that are slow and plodding I can never really get into. Combine that with the insane difficulty that comes from those kind of slower methodical mechanics, combined with the fact that they're just a bit more simplistic. There's a lot less going on in something like Bloodborne in terms of the raw mechanics than Ninja Gaiden. You have less of a moveset. There's only like 2 or 3 real moves. I'm sure I'll get flamed for that. But for the most part, the combo system is much more simplistic because it's not what you're doing, but how you're doing it. That's really where the challenge in something like Bloodborne comes from. The moves are not nearly as over the top and bombastic as in something like a Ninja Gaiden, where you can literally flip off walls and do like backwards down slash strikes and fucking counter and do all this crazy rolling and dodging and things. Bloodborne's slower. It's more of a thinking game, whereas in Ninja Gaiden you have to react. And the same thing with Devil May Cry, even though Devil May Cry is much more offensive, whereas Ninja Gaiden is much more defensive. Not really important to the topic at hand. I just enjoy games that don't beat the shit out of you unrewardingly, which is why there's a lot of classic games that I can't get into. Tons of the NES library. Like, for example, despite the fact loving Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox, not as much a fan as Ninja Gaiden on the NES because the mechanics are much more simplistic, but it still beats the fucking shit out of you constantly. So there's a lot of older games that I just can't get into because they become too frustrating to outstay their welcome. Like, they have more shallow mechanics or just mechanics that I'm personally not a fan of, and they no longer are interesting enough to keep me around despite the high difficulty of the game. So I'm a casual. I have other things I'd rather do than play video games, and I want my video games to be a respite from difficulty, not another platform to facilitate it. So that's all I got. Let me know in the comments below if you think I'm fucking pathetic. You're not the first person. I'm the first person to think that, but let me know anyways. That's all I got. Till next time, take it easy, guys.